Hello, we welcome you to today's Bible study. Today we are going to look at an important event in David's transition. We remember in previous Bible studies that David had several encounters with Saul. Saul was running after him, trying to catch him to kill him, and David was running away, hiding from place to place. And he eventually had the second encounter where he had every opportunity to kill Saul, but did not kill Saul. But he talked to him. And after talking to him, Saul appeared to have repented from what he was doing. He asked David to forgive him. He pledged that he will not go after David anymore. Well, they went their way. David went his way, Saul went his way, but David felt that Saul would come back, and that if he kept within close range of Saul, that one of these days that Saul would get him. So he decided to seek refuge behind the enemy lines, so to speak, within the Philistine territory. So we're going to look at the things that happened there. The events there gave David an opportunity to set standard or define conditions for community rights and responsibilities. And this might well be the reason that God let all of this happen, so that he will give David the opportunity to define for his people the rights and responsibilities of an individual as a member of a community. And we're going to learn that tonight. We will learn that David, as I said, took refuge in Philistine territory. His host was Achish, the king of Gath. David came and asked for a place to stay, and then after a while he asked for a territory, an area away from the palace city. Said he wanted to be by himself, but his main reason for going there is so that he could be outside Saul's reach. He didn't want to have to run for Saul anymore. We will also learn that during this period, the Philistines went to war against Israel. In the preparation for war, as their people were moving, David joined Achish, in fact, wanted to fight alongside of Achish. And Achish was delighted, so he wanted David to fight with him. But the other Philistine commanders were not delighted. They wouldn't have any of that. So they told Achish he had to send David back to his base. So David was sent back. While they were out trying to join the Philistines in war, the Amalekites raided their base. So by being rejected from the Philistine front line, David had the opportunity to confront the fact that Amalekites had raided his base. He had the opportunity to go after them and recover some of the things they had taken. Then the sharing of the battle proceeds between his people, among his people, gave him an opportunity to make a ruling that today defines for us the meaning of community rights and responsibilities. And we will see that everything we read is in 1 Samuel chapter 27, 29, and 30. We will begin with David settling in Ziklag, in the city of Ziklag. He sought, because he wanted to be protected, he didn't want to have to keep running for Saul. He said, one of these days Saul was going to catch him. So he went and asked for refuge with Achish, the king of Gath. And when Achish accepted him as a refugee, then he demanded, he said, look, we shouldn't really be in the palace city. Can you give us a piece of territory somewhere else that's away from the palace? And Achish gave the town of Ziklag to David. David settled there with his 600 men and their families. So this was quite a settlement. And let us read about this in 1 Samuel chapter 27, verses 1 to 7.
1 Samuel chapter 27. But David thought to himself, one of these days I will be destroyed by the hand of Saul. The best thing I can do is to escape to the land of the Philistines. Then Saul will give up searching for me anywhere in Israel, and I will slip out of his hand. So David and the 600 men with him left and went over to Achish, son of March, king of Gath. David and his men sailed in Gath with Achish. Each man had his family with him, and David had his 2 wives, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail of Carmel, the widow of Nabal. When Saul was told that David had fled to Gath, he no longer searched for him. Then David said to Achish, if I have found favor in your eyes, let a place be assigned to me in one of the country towns, that I may live there. Why should your servant live in the royal city with you? So on that day Achish gave him Ziklag, and it has belonged to the kings of Judah ever since. David lived in Philistine territory 1 year and 4 months.
Okay, David lived there 1 year and 4 months, and what we are studying tonight is really what things that happened during a part of that 1 year and 4 months. Well, while he was settled in Ziklag, from time to time, remember, these people are basically outlaws. So David was a king. He knows he will be king of Israel one day, but at this point, all he is the leader of a group of 600 people and their families that had run away from Saul, that didn't want to work under Saul anymore. But they didn't have any source of income, so from time to time they would carry out raids, and they usually raided Israeli enemies that live in nearby territories. But he didn't want his host, the king of Achish, the king of Gath, to know that he was going from his territory to raid Israeli enemies, because Palestinian, not Palestinian, the Philistines were Israeli enemies. So somebody living in their territory and going to raid other Israeli enemies is not exactly their friend. So because of that, David had to conceal his raid from Achish. Each time that David had a raid, Achish will ask him, where did you raid? And he will just tell him it's in the Negev. He mentioned territories that were not so friendly to the Philistines. So raiding them wouldn't be a problem. Let us read about this. 1 Samuel 27, verses 8 through 12.
1 Samuel chapter 27. Now David and his men went up and raided the Geshurites, the Gizurites, and the Amalekites. From ancient times, these peoples had lived in the land extending to Shur and Egypt. Whenever David attacked an area, he did not leave a man or a woman alive, but took sheep and cattle, donkeys and camels and clothes. Then he returned to Achish. When Achish asked, "Where did you go raiding today?" David would say, "Against the Negev of Judah, or against the Negev of Jeremiel, or against the Negev of the Kenites." He did not leave a man or a woman alive to be brought to Gath, for he thought they might inform on us and say, "This is what David did," and such was his practice as long as he lived in Philistine territory. Achish trusted David and said to himself, "He has become so odious to his people, the Israelites, that he will be my servant forever."
Yes, this is what Achish believed, that David will be his servant forever, because he knows David killed Goliath, he knows David is a great military man, military commander. But he believed that whatever happened between them is such that he cannot return to Israel anymore, and which meant that he will be Achish's servant for as long as they live. Well, so the Philistines went out they set up to battle. They were going to a battle line to set off a battle against Israel. And all their commanders were going in large numbers, every person with his troop. So David followed Achish. David and his men followed Achish. And Achish liked that. He didn't really object. He expected David to fight on his side. But the other Philistine commanders would not have any of that. They said, isn't this the man that they praised when he killed Goliath? The man that they sing about, that he killed tens of thousands, while Saul killed thousands? Isn't this the man? How can you bring him to join us? Yeah, he may be unhappy with his people now, but one way he can win their favor back is to take our heads back to Israel. So we don't want to take the risk. Send him back. So Achish discussed with David. None of them liked it. David argued a little bit, but Achish told him, I said, well, these Philistine commanders have spoken. You have to go back to Ziklag. So David and his men the next morning got up and returned to Ziklag. Essentially, David was rejected from the Philistines' front line. Let us read about this. 1 Samuel chapter 29, verses 1 to 11.
1 Samuel chapter 29. The Philistines gathered all their forces at Aphek, and Israel camped by the spring in Jezreel. As the Philistine rulers marched with their units of hundreds and thousands, David and his men were marching at the rear with Achish. The commanders of the Philistines asked, "What about these Hebrews?" Achish replied. "Is this not David, who was an officer of Saul, king of Israel? He has already been with me for over a year, and from the day he left Saul until now, I have found no fault in him." But the Philistine commanders were angry with him and said, "Send the man back, that he may return to the place you assigned him. He must not go with us into battle, or he will turn against us during the fighting. How better could he regain his master's favor than by taking the heads of our own men?" Isn't this David, the king that they sang about in their dances? Saul has slain his thousands, and David has tens of thousands. So Achish called David and said to him, "As surely as the Lord lives, you have been reliable, and I would be pleased to have you serve with me in the army. From the day you came to me until now, I have found no fault in you, but the rulers don't approve of you. Turn back and go in peace. Do nothing to displease the Philistine rulers." "But what have I done?" asked David. "What have you found against your servant from the day I came to you until now? Why can't I go and fight against the enemies of my lord the king?" Achish answered, "I know that you have been as pleasing in my eyes as an angel of God. Nevertheless, the Philistine commanders have said, 'He must not go up with us into battle.' Now get up early along with your master's servants, who have come with you, and leave in the morning as soon as it is light." So David and his men got up early in the morning to go back to the land of Philistines, and the Philistines went up to Jezreel. went to Jezreel.
Yeah. So David was rejected from the Philistine front line. And that gave him an opportunity to go home. Well, when he got home, he found out that the Amalekites had raided their base. They burnt Ziklag and took all the women, children, and other people left behind. They took them all, they captured them and took them as captives. They didn't kill them, but they went away with all of them. And this happened while David was aware, trying to join Philistines in a war against Israel. This is an important point here, because if he had been accepted at the Philistine front line, he would have stayed there. I don't know how the battle would have gone, but he would have lost time. He would not have had the time to try to rescue his people that were taken captive by the Amalekites. But coming back, since he was rejected, he came back and he saw what had happened. Let us read about this. 1 Samuel chapter 30, verses 1 to 6.
1 Samuel chapter 30. David and his men reached Ziklag on the third day. Now the Amalekites had raided the Negev and the Ziklag. They had attacked Ziklag and burned it. And they had taken captive the woman and all who were in it, both young and old. They killed none of them, but carried them off as they went on their way. When David and his men came to Ziklag, they found it destroyed by fire, and their wives and sons and daughters taken captive. So David and his men wept aloud until they had no strength left to weep. David's 2 wives had been captured, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. David was greatly distressed because the men were talking of stoning him. Each one was bitter in spirit because of his sons and daughters. But David found strength in the Lord his God.
But David found strength in the Lord his God. And the next thing he did actually was to consult with God. He had a priest with him. Remember the priest that escaped, Abiathar, the priest that escaped from Nob during the Nob massacre, when Saul killed all the priests of Nob. So he called Abiathar. He said, okay, bring the ephod. The ephod is, the priestly gown, something they wear each time to make themselves holy to talk to God, to prepare themselves to talk to God. So he asked Abiathar to come with the ephod, and they consulted with God. He asked God whether he should pursue the Amalekite raiders. This is what we know of David, that whatever he contemplated an action, he would pray about it, ask God whether he should do it or not, which was quite different from what we saw when Nabal annoyed him and he wanted to teach Nabal a few lessons. But in this case, David consulted with God. He asked whether he should pursue the Amalekites, and God said, yes, pursue them, you will catch them. Then David and his 600 men started. They got to a stream. 200 men were too weak to continue. So David went with 400 men, and 200 stayed back. And since the 200 stayed back, their main function was to guard the base, to guard their supplies, make sure another group of raiders don't come in and take their things away. When David and his men and the other 400 men were going, they came across an Egyptian that was a servant of the Amalekites. He had been abandoned because he was sick. So David took him, fed him, and asked him some questions. Let us read about this. 1 Samuel chapter 30, verses 7 to 15.
1 Samuel chapter 30. Then David said to Abiathar, the priest, the son of Ahimelech, bring me the the ephod. Abiathar brought it to him, and David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I pursue this raiding party? Will I overtake them?" "Pursue them," he answered. "You will certainly overtake them and succeed in the rescue." David and the 600 with him came to the Bezor Raven, where some stayed behind. For 200 men were too exhausted to cross the ravine, but David and 400 men continued the pursuit. They found an Egyptian in the field and brought him to David. They gave him water to drink and food to eat. Part of a cake of pressed figs and 2 cakes of raisins. He ate and was revived, for he had not eaten any food or drunk any water for 3 days and 3 nights. David asked him, "To whom do you belong, and where do you come from?" He said, "I am an Egyptian, the slave of an Amalekite. My master abandoned me when I became ill 3 days ago." He raided the Negev of the Kerethites and the territory belonging to Judah, and the Negev of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag. David asked him, "Can you lead me down to this raiding party?" He answered, "Swear to me before God that you will not kill me or hand me over to my master, and I will take you down to them."
Yes, he asked David to swear to him that he will not be handed over to his master. David made the oath, and the man took them to where the Amalekites were. When David caught up with them, they were celebrating because they had taken so much plunder from all the places they raided. Well, a battle started between him and them and lasted for about 24 hours. The result is he killed them, he destroyed them. Some of them ran away. They said 400 men on donkey, on camels or something. We'll read that in the Bible. They ran away, but other than that, David and his men destroyed the raiders, killed many of them, and recovered everything that they had stolen, including the people that they took captive. He also took a lot more as plunder, a lot of flocks and herds as plunder. That was what they did in those days. If you defeated people, you take their things. It was called plunder. Let us read about this in 1 Samuel 30, verses 16 to 20.
1 Samuel chapter 30. He led David down, and there they were, scattered over the countryside, eating and drinking and reveling because of the great amount of plunder they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from Judah. David fought them from dusk until the evening of the next day, and none of them got away, except 400 young men who rode off on camels and fled. David recovered everything the Amalekites had taken, including his 2 wives. Nothing was missing, young or old, boy or girl, plunder or anything else that had been taken. David brought everything back. He took all the flocks and herds, and his men drove them ahead of the other livestock, saying, "This is David's plunder."
This is David's plunder. So they had defeated the Amalekites and had taken everything that they could lay hand on. Well, they went back, and when they got back to their base in Ziklag, the 200 men that were left behind came to greet them. And they were very happy. David greeted them. But then some among the 400 men said, wait a minute. You people didn't go to the battle with us. So yes, you can take your wives and children, but you don't deserve any share of the plunder. We cannot let you share from the plunder. Well, David heard about this and he said, no, you cannot do that. Let us read about this in the Bible and then we'll come back and talk about it because it's really the lesson of the day. Let us read 1 Samuel 30, verses 21 to 25.
1 Samuel chapter 30. Then David came to the 200 men who had been too exhausted to follow him, and who were left behind at the Bezor Raven. They came out to meet David and the people with him, As David and his men approached, he greeted them. But all the evil men and troublemakers among David's followers said, "Because they did not go with us, we will not share with them the plunder we recovered. However, each man may take his wife and children and go." David replied, "No, my brothers, you must not do that with what the Lord has given us. He has protected us and handed us the forces that came against us."
Handed over to us the forces that came against us.
"Who will listen to what you say? The share of the man who stayed with the supplies is to be the same as that of him who went down to the battle. All will share alike." David made this a statute and ordinance for Israel from that day to this.
Who will listen to what you said? The share of the man who stayed with the supplies is to be the same as that of him who went down to the battle. All will share alike. This is a key. This is very important. In fact, they said this became a statute and an ordinance for Israel from that day onwards to this day. I don't know whether it is still true today, but I believe it is. What is this? This was not just about sharing battle proceeds. He said, the share of the man who stayed with the supplies. So he said, look, there are two groups of us. One group went to battle, one group stayed with the supplies. The share of everybody will be equal, whether you went to the battle or you stayed with the supplies. Essentially what he's saying is, everybody has a responsibility to the society, to the community we belong to. Our community of 600, every one of us has a responsibility. Our responsibilities cannot be the same. We do different things because we need different things. But when you share the proceeds of battle, everybody gets an equal share. So everybody has a responsibility to the community, and everybody has the same right from the community. That's the principle here. This is so important that several generations later, the Apostle Paul, please, not Saul, the Apostle Paul taught the same lesson, the same concept of community rights and responsibilities. In his letter to the Corinthians, 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 14 to 31, we're not going to read it, it's kind of long, but I have paraphrased the content. The lesson, the title of the message was "One Body, Many Parts." That is, the body is made up of many parts. This is just something he used to try to illustrate the concept of community rights and responsibilities. He said the body has many parts. Every part has its role. The eye helps the body see. The nose carries the sense of smell. The ears carry the sense of hearing as well as other things they do. The legs help you, your feet and your legs help you move. The arms help you, perform a lot of functions. Then he said, if the eyes cannot say to the nose, hey, I am the leader, you get out of here. Because then where would the sense of smell come from? So the nose is there to provide the sense of smell. That's its responsibility. And the body needs the sense of smell in order to survive. So essentially he's saying that every community is made up of individuals, and each individual has his role to the community, his responsibilities to the community. When the community does well, the individuals will be happy. If one part is honored, every part rejoices. But if one part suffers, every part suffers. Think of it when your ears are swollen. Every part of your body is unhappy, it's aching one way or the other. So the same way, every individual member of a community has responsibilities to the community, and you perform the responsibilities to make your contribution. Every person has equal rights within the community, and your right is independent of your responsibility. Remember, David said, whether you went to battle or you stayed home to guard the supplies, you have the same share of the proceeds. The share of the proceeds is like your right. He made the point here that though you have your individual responsibility, your right does not depend on your responsibility. So another person should not come and say, hey, you don't deserve your rights because I contributed more than you did. There is no such thing. Rights are equal, responsibilities are different. And they may be unequal. There might be other ways of recognizing the fact that responsibilities are unequal. That is the reality of a community as we know it today. But the point is, the rights that you derive from the community are independent. They are independent of your responsibility to the community. Of course, you know that the way that the community provides rights is through the functions that members of the community perform. So by performing your function, you are providing for your rights as well as the rights of others. But you cannot be denied your right because of the nature of your responsibility. Somebody cannot say, oh, you are just the sweeper of the street, so because of that, you don't have a right for this or that. No. David told us clearly in the sharing of the proceeds of battle, and Paul preached it to show that there is a spiritual basis for this. Paul preached the same concept several generations later. Well, this gives us an opportunity to talk about community. God created every individual person as part of a community. Nobody exists by himself or by herself except as part of a community. And to start, your community, your first community is your family. The dad, the mom, and all the children, siblings. That is the family community. Everybody has a responsibility to the family community, and everybody has rights from the family community. Your rights are independent of your responsibilities, but you have to perform your responsibilities in order to make your contribution to the community. As you grow up, your community expands. At one time or the other, you're going to have a church community, which in fact Paul was talking about specifically in that lesson. The lesson was targeted at functions within the church community. You can have a school community, it can be your class, it can be your hostel, it can be whatever group you belong to. You have a responsibility within that community. If you don't know what the responsibilities are, find out. You cannot go there just to warm the bench. There is something you owe to the community. Find out what it is so that you can make your contribution. Then, of course, do not deny anybody their rights because you think their contribution was smaller than others. So don't be part of a group that will say, oh, you guys didn't go to that fight with us, so what we have won. Of course, you don't win things by fighting these days, but it's just a part. It could be a soccer match or something. Say, you guys, I was part of the 11 that played, after all, I scored the winning goal. That is true. You made a very good contribution. But you cannot, on the basis of that, deny other people their rights as members of the community. Of course, your community will grow as you grow. In job, as you get into the world, the work, you are going to encounter job-related organizations. These are communities. The group of people that work in a company form a community. Of course, there your responsibilities are defined by your supervisor and all that. But there are other things that you are not assigned, that you suddenly find are needed and you can do them. You go ahead and do them because that's part of your contribution. Then it goes to the wider world community. So you see that every person is born as a member of a community, and then your community grows as you grow. And one of the things we will learn in the future is that God actually structured the family community so that you can learn your community rights and responsibilities as you grow up. This is part of one of the purposes of the family, one of the reasons God created people to start life in a family. Is that so that you can learn your community responsibilities as you grow up. Well, so what we have learned today can be summed up in these few, obviously we learned the accounts of David's interaction with Achish and the Philistines and the Amalekites and all that. But the primary lesson is on these community rights and responsibilities. Everybody owes community responsibilities, and you should. Part of your responsibility is to understand your responsibility. At times, somebody assigns you and tells you, okay, you do this, you do that. But most often, no, your responsibilities you have to discover. You have to understand them. By knowing who you are and the role you can play as a member of the community. So you understand your responsibility. Then understanding your responsibilities will enable you make your contributions in every situation. Don't wait for others. Do it yourself, make your responsibility. Make your contributions to your community, whatever the community is. Every member of the community has equal rights, and your rights are independent of your responsibilities. So don't be part of a group that will try to deny somebody his or her rights simply because the person appears to have contributed less than the others. Your basic rights is equal. Basic rights apply equally to every individual. This is the concept of human rights, for instance. Being a human being, you have this right. Doesn't matter what else is happening around you, that is your right. The same way, as a member of a community, there are certain rights that every person has. In the case of David illustrated this with sharing of battle proceeds. So for him, the sharing of battle proceeds is independent of your role in the battle. Everybody gets the same share. Paul preached his famous message of one body, many parts, saying that the body is made up of many parts. Each part has a role, and each part benefits from all the other parts performing their roles. So what each part does creates benefit for all the other parts, for the body as a whole. So you cannot look at somebody and say, hey, you are less important because you are like the ear, And then the eye will say to the nose, oh, you are less important because, you know, I'm seeing. Then the nose will tell you, well, suppose I don't smell. You know, there are a lot of things you know exist because of their smell, not because you've seen them. Well, today's Bible study is a short one. Do you have any question, Kosi?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So we thank you. Thank everybody that will participate in the Bible study sometime in the future by watching the video or listening to the audio. May God bless you. Thank you.